Janet McCarthy, thanks so much for the super chat. You put a super sticker, but that Michigan should be number one. So who knows?
It's fair. I mean, look, fair. Look, anytime you're undefeated and you're taking care of business, I mean, um, I don't know if it's justified, but look, you're talking about a Georgia team that just had a pretty impressive win over the number one team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the number three team beating the number one in impressive fashion. It's gonna be hard for Michigan to jump that. But Janet, I understand what you're saying. Um, I'm with you. But Georgia's undefeated too, and they just had, to me, the most impressive win of the year in terms of rankings. And what Tennessee did, Tennessee beat Alabama. And look, no Alabama. Look, Alabama has two losses. Obviously, they're not vintage Bama, but still, that's a very, very impressive win that Georgia had today. And they, to me, I think they solidified more than anybody that they are the number one team thus far this season. But Michigan has a pretty good right to be number two. And look, at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. As long as you get to one or two seeds, and you would think the weaker, I won't call anybody weak, but the weaker draws in the playoffs, and then that's what matters. And we'll see you at the finish line. And we'll see who's the true number one then.
Yeah, I think it'll be. I think this year won't have the cakewalk number four seed that we've had in the past couple years. I think I think essentially the goal will be to avoid the four seed because that means you're probably going to draw Georgia. But other than that, I don't think there's going to be a Cincinnati or a Washington or a Notre Dame at the at that four spot. I think it's going to be a pretty good team. I think it's going to be a one loss conference champ that's at that number four spot. So I don't think there's going to be any cakewalks, but
Definitely not LSU. I meant to bring that up. I saw someone brought up earlier. Well, what if LSU runs the table? No,
nah,
you're not going to get a two-loss
two loss team.
team into
Nope.
the college football
Well, and
playoff.
that's the thing too. They're not beating Georgia like that. You know what I mean?
No, they're
You
not.
can run the
They're not.
table
But
to get to the
just make your
conference
point.
championship, and then you're losing. That's what's going to happen.
So that's it. But I think we're pretty much covered everything. Michigan's I wouldn't even say survived. They adjusted and they thrived. Won in very, very impressive fashion. I would say this too. If you really consider things, look, you texted to me earlier. You said Greg Schiano deserves a raise. This is earlier in the game because how he
Mm-hmm.
had Rutgers playing. You know, final score was 52-17. This isn't the Rutgers under Asher. When they were getting destroyed by everybody, and Michigan was putting up 50 points, and this is a very respectable. I said respectable, not Rutgers program. Like they play hard. They could be a pain in the butt. And so for Michigan to this is a different type of dominant win over Rutgers. I think in years past, hey, we seen Rutgers gave us issues last year at times. So, you know, um, overall, very, very impressive win by Michigan. Probably the most impressive win in the Big Ten this week. Maybe you could say MSU going to Illinois and doing what they did. Um, OSU probably had the worst win this week. Very, very uninspiring, concerning. I guess if you're an Ohio State fan, that's it. You want to chop it up to weather and all that, fine, do you? But I would say whatever. So I don't know. I think we're pretty much good.
I agree. One last thing for GOJ says the committee showed you all in the initial poll what they thought of Michigan. They don't respect their non-con schedule. That may be true, but at the same time, by the time this whole thing is done, you will have played a top three team in the country, and probably, based on our discussion, will have beaten that team at that point. So even though they don't respect the out of conference, I mean, being undefeated and beating a top three team in the country and being an undefeated Power Five champ, I think you're gonna be just fine.
Yeah,
So
and I think if the committee is watching these games, I think one thing you have to know is about Michigan is that they are one of the most consistent teams in the country.
hmm
They're really, really good and they're consistent. You know what you're going to get, right? I think teams like TCU and Clemson, obviously, now you see it's teams that are a little bit up and down, but you really don't know what you're going to get. We saw Clemson struggle with Wake Forest earlier this year. They've had a couple close calls this year where they were teetering. on losing. So I mean, look, I would think that the committee pays attention. They would look at that like, yeah, you know what, we need to understand that no, they may not, they may win a certain way, but they're consistent, and especially with considering what they did last year. I mean, what are they? They were 11-1, to 11-1 last year.
Who's that?
Michigan only had one loss, two losses. So if you think about this,
Well, they were 11-1, and
and
then
lose to
twelve
Georgia
and one. Beat the 12th win was the Iowa.
conference, right? So
Correct.
12-2, and it's 9-0. So what are the 21-2? Their last 23 games. Like I
Pretty
think all
impressive.
that's really impressive when
I
you
think
look
that's the
at
same record as Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, because Georgia has had no. So yeah, close. I think Georgia's like 22-1 because the
yeah. So I
Georgia
mean
lost
that
the
the
championship game.
point
Yeah,
is like
but I mean, yeah,
that's very, very
pretty impressive.
impressive, dude. It is,
Absolutely.
and it's just and so that matters. I mean, Michigan is one of the most has been the last almost going on 2 years, one of the most consistent, really good teams in the country. Like those things matter. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because that sounds funny saying it like that, but because you take care of business, then they're not going to deny you. So that's it. And Michigan has the ability. It's not like in previous years we're like, man, Ohio State, we just want to punch it. Like there's a point in time when we first started this start doing this last year, we were having people say stuff like, man, let's just try to get good as we can, have a puncher's chance versus Ohio State. That's how people would talk, the puncher's chance. And now you're like, oh, you know what? I feel pretty good about our chances. And if we don't beat Ohio State, I'm going to be upset because I think we could beat them. And that's where I'm at. Like, if we lose to Ohio State, I'm going to be upset because I think we're just as good. We're different, but I think we're just as good. Maybe even better. But we're different. So that's it.